He had been dragged into the alley by two men pulled between them, his feet barely helping, his body already weak. Their faces were covered, caps pulled low, the kind of men who didn't want to be remembered. They dumped him near the wall like he was nothing, just let go and stepped back. One of them stood there for a second, watching, waiting to see if he would move. He didn't, and that was enough for them. They turned and walked away fast, disappearing back toward the street, not running, just leaving, like the job was done. The alley went quiet again. The snow kept falling. He was already half dead when Amanda noticed him. Not dramatic. No screaming. No crowd. Just a body slumped near the alley behind her building. Snow collecting on his coat, like the city was trying to erase him. People passed. Some glanced. Most didn't. Amanda almost didn't either. She just finished 18 hours. Her feet burned. Her back screamed. One missed call from her son's school. And in her pocket, pressed flat against her palm, was her last $20. That money already had a job. Milk. A promise to Ken about shoes that would come soon. She took 3 steps past the man. Stopped. Something about the way he was lying there didn't look like sleep. Didn't look drunk. It looked like someone who'd already lost. Amanda knelt. The man was shivering so hard his teeth clicked. Not loud. Desperate. Like his body was reminding itself it was still alive. His lips were blue. His coat was expensive. Way too expensive for a man freezing behind an apartment building. That should have been her warning. Instead, she cared. 3 blocks to the 24-hour diner. She ordered soup, bought a blanket, spent her last $20. The money saved for Ken's shoes. When she came back, she wrapped the man in it. Her hands shook, not from cold, from the fear of what happens when you spend your last dollar and there's no safety net. She stayed until his breathing slowed, until the shivering stopped, until the snow quit settling on his lashes. She whispered prayer in Igbo, one her mother used when there was nothing left but faith. Then she left. No name, no thanks, no looking back, because Amanda knew some help had to be given without expectation, or became something else entirely. She never imagined the man wasn't drunk. He'd been drugged, betrayed, erased by people powerful enough to make a human being vanish in Seoul without consequences. His name was Seo Joon. By morning, his disappearance had already started a quiet war. A week later, Amanda's life started collapsing. Her visa status changed. No explanation given. Her supervisor stopped returning calls. Strangers appeared near her building, too well-dressed, too alert, standing too still. Then the black SUVs came. They sealed off her street like a crime scene. Neighbors watched from windows. Mrs. Park grabbed Amanda's arm and asked what she'd done. Her voice carried the kind of fear that spreads between women who've learned that attention from powerful people never ends well. Amanda didn't know. A man stepped out, tailored suit, calm eyes, voice that didn't match the chaos around them. Amanda felt something cold drop in her chest. She recognized him, not as the dying stranger, but as the man whose survival had just cost her everything. Amanda Okafor learned early that survival required invisible architecture. Wait before Ken. Work 2 shifts when one won't cover rent. Smile at neighbors even when exhaustion sits heavy on your ribs. Keep your head down. Keep moving. Keep the machine running on fumes and prayer. The neighborhood wasn't kind or cruel. It just was. Busan's Gamcheon-dong with steep alleys and painted houses stacked up the hillside. The kind of place where people knew your face but didn't ask your story. Amanda preferred it that way. She'd come to Korea 7 years earlier. 1 suitcase, a nursing certification, a 3-year-old son. The plan was simple. Work, save, send money home, build something sturdy. The plan didn't include raising Ken alone. Didn't include the father who promised to follow and never showed. Didn't include being both parents, provider and protector, the one with answers when she had none. But Amanda carried what couldn't be put down. She worked at a care facility on Busan's edge. Hard work, barely enough pay, but she was good at it. Good at small kindnesses, at listening, at making people feel seen when the system treated them like numbers. Her co-workers respected her. Her patients loved her. Her supervisor relied on her for shifts no one wanted. Amanda said yes, because saying no had consequences she couldn't afford. At home, Ken was 8 now, growing too fast. Bright, funny, way too observant. He'd started asking questions she couldn't answer. Questions about fathers and tiredness and why they never went anywhere. Questions that cut because they were fair and she had no good answers. Amanda responded with patience, with honesty when possible, deflection when necessary. She told Ken they were building something, that it wouldn't always be this hard. She wasn't sure she believed it, but belief wasn't required, only motion. Every 2 weeks, she sent money to Enugu. Not much, never enough, but enough to keep the connection alive. Her mother's voice was always the same, grateful, worried, quietly disappointed Amanda hadn't come home yet. Amanda never told her how close she was to breaking, never mentioned crying in the bathroom after Ken slept, never said that some days, being strong felt heavier than any shift, admitting it would make it real. And real wasn't affordable. Not yet. So she smiled, worked, prayed, fed neighbors when her own cupboard was nearly empty. She showed up, kept going, told herself kindness, even the expensive kind, still mattered. The night she found the man in the snow, Amanda was running on 4 hours of sleep, extra shift, co-worker's emergency, evenings spent bathing patients, checking vitals, hearing the same stories for the 100th time. Her back hurt, her feet were numb. She'd missed Ken's bedtime again, 6 blocks home through Gamcheon-dong's narrow streets. She knew which alley stayed too dark, which corners to avoid. She knew how to be invisible. But that night, something made her stop. At first, she thought it was trash. Then she saw the shape, the wrong angle of a body folded against the cold. Her first instinct was to keep walking. She wasn't naive. She knew what happened to women who got too close to wrong situations. But she also knew what happened when nobody stopped. She'd seen it. Patients who'd been forgotten. Families who stopped visiting. People who died alone because nobody had time. She couldn't be that person. She moved closer. Young man, maybe her age. Expensive clothes, or had been once. Wool coat, leather shoes, but his face was pale. Lips blue, hands bare and red. Amanda knelt, checked his pulse. Faint, but there. She leaned closer, caught something chemical. Not alcohol. Sharper. Medicinal. He wasn't drunk. He'd been drugged. Her heart kicked hard. She should call someone. Should leave. Should not get involved. But by the time help came, it might be too late. She decided. 3 blocks to the only store open. Bought a blanket. Spent her last 20. The money for Ken's shoes. Came back. Wrapped the man up. Got warm broth into his mouth. Stayed until his breathing evened. Until color returned. Didn't ask his name. Didn't wait for thanks. She just left. Some help had to be given without expectation. Or it became something else. If you're still with us, we do appreciate it. You can as well like and subscribe only if the story resonates with you. So Joon woke in a hospital bed 3 days later. Doctors said he'd been lucky. Someone found him. Hypothermia was setting in. Another hour might have been fatal. They asked if Seo Joon remembered. Not at first, but over days, fragments came back. The cold, the weight of his own body, the sense of giving up, then warmth, not from a heater or hospital, the warmth of presence. Someone had knelt beside him. Someone stayed. Someone made sure he'd survive. So Joon didn't know who, but he'd find out. So Joon wasn't built for helplessness. His life ran on control, precision, managing risk and outcome. So Joon ran a logistics company, handled sensitive shipments for people who paid well for discretion, corporations, collectors, occasionally people who didn't ask questions. So Joon didn't deal in violence, didn't break laws, but he operated in the gray spaces where legality blurred just enough to stay profitable. Good at it, good at distance, good at not needing anyone. Then someone saved him and disappeared. It unsettled him. Next week, So Joon recovered, returned to work, handled shipments, attended meetings, functioned, but underneath, something shifted. So Joon couldn't stop thinking about whoever helped him. He needed to know, not because he owed them. Debt could be paid, transactions closed, but the kindness was given without asking for anything back. And so Joon didn't know how to process that. So Joon hired someone to investigate. Wasn't hard. Convenience store kept receipts. Security footage existed. A woman, alone, buying blanket and soup in the middle of the night. Clear face. 2 days later, he had a name. Amanda Okafor, nurse's assistant. Single mother. Nigerian immigrant. No record. No debts. No flags. Just Someone trying to survive. He stared at the file. He told himself he just wanted to say thanks. Just closure. But deeper down, he knew it was something else. What he didn't tell anyone, not his assistant, not his partners, not even himself at first, was that finding Amanda came at the worst time. In 3 months, he was marrying Kang Min-ah. The engagement had been arranged 2 years back, not by matchmakers, by business necessity. Min-ah's family controlled Korea's largest shipping conglomerate. Her father built an empire on container ships and port access his company desperately needed. The marriage was a merger. Clean, profitable, beneficial. Min-ah understood this. She'd been raised in the same world, where marriages were alliances and emotion was a luxury nobody could afford. Min-ah was beautiful, educated, perfectly composed, spoke 4 languages, knew which fork to use, managed social obligations like military campaigns. Exactly what Seo Joon's position required. And Min-ah bored him to tears. Not that it mattered. Boredom wasn't ground for breaking contracts. The announcements were made. The venue was booked. In 3 months, he would promise forever to a woman he respected but didn't feel anything for. He had made peace with that, until a stranger knelt beside him in snow and reminded him what warmth felt like. Amanda didn't notice the changes at first. Letter came. Her visa renewal had been expedited. She assumed clerical correction. Landlord called. Overpayment on her account. She didn't remember overpaying. Didn't argue. Week later, Ken came home with new shoes. School secretary said anonymous donor covered supplies. Amanda felt uneasy, but also relieved. And relief was hard to turn away. Wasn't until the black cars appeared that she understood. She just put Ken to bed, folding laundry, saw them through the window. 2 sedans. Dark, expensive, wrong for Gamcheon-dong. Man stepped out. Tall, composed, familiar in a way that made her chest tight. Walked to her building. Knocked. Amanda opened the door. Chain still on. The man introduced himself as Seo Joon and explained he wanted to thank her. Amanda's stomach dropped. She told him it wasn't necessary, that she didn't need anything, that he should please just let it go. But he didn't leave. Asked if they could talk. Just a moment. Against better judgment, Amanda let him in. He sat in her small living room and tried to explain. He told Amanda what happened that night, how he'd been set up by a former associate, drugged and left to die, how her intervention saved his life. Said he wanted to repay her. Amanda listened, didn't interrupt, didn't react. When Seo Joon finished, she told him she was glad he was okay, but that she didn't want anything, that she'd only done what anyone should do. He had expected gratitude, or suspicion, or anger, not dismissal. He asked if there was anything she needed, anything at all. Amanda hesitated. She thought of Ken. The rent, visa paperwork, always one mistake from disaster, but also thought of what accepting help might mean. She said no, that she appreciated it, but didn't need rescuing. So Joon left feeling something rare. Rejection, not professional, not transactional, personal, and it bothered him more than it should, especially considering in 3 months. So Joon was marrying someone else. Over the next weeks, So Joon found reasons to return, told himself it was responsibility, closure, making sure Amanda was okay. But the truth was Messier. He started appearing at the cafe near her apartment, at her bus stop, at the park where she took Ken. Never approached directly, just existed in her orbit. Amanda noticed. At first thought it was coincidence, then realized it wasn't. She confronted him one evening outside a convenience store. Amanda asked why he was following her. He looked genuinely surprised. Explained he wasn't following her, just wanted to make sure she was safe. Said she didn't need protection, that she'd been taking care of herself long before he showed up. Told him to stop. He nodded, apologized, said he understood, but he didn't stop, just became more careful. And in the back of his mind, a question grew louder. What was Seo Joon doing? Why couldn't he let this go? Why did Amanda struggling alone bother him more than marrying Mina in 3 months? No answers, only growing certainty that something fundamental shifted the night she saved him. The hell continued. Amanda's car, old, unreliable, constantly breaking, suddenly repaired. She hadn't asked, hadn't authorized it, but when she picked it up, the mechanic said the bill was paid. Ken's school received a donation, covered his tuition for the year. Amanda's work schedule shifted. Suddenly no worse shifts. Weekends off. Time to breathe. She knew who was behind it. Called the number on his card. told him to stop. He claimed he didn't know what she was talking about, suggested that if good things were happening, maybe she should just accept them. Amanda felt walls closing in. She knew how this worked, seen it before, in her family, in her community, in stories her mother told. Kindness with strings, help that turned into obligation, generosity that became control. She didn't want to owe anyone, especially not a man she barely knew. But the truth was, Amanda was already starting to rely on it, and that terrified her, because Amanda hadn't survived 7 years by accepting handouts. She survived by staying invisible, by not drawing attention, by not owing anyone. And now this man, this stranger who should have stayed a stranger, was making her visible in dangerous ways. Kong Min wasn't stupid. Min-ah hadn't built a reputation as Seoul's most formidable businesswoman by ignoring details. And Min-ah certainly hadn't agreed to marry him without understanding exactly what kind of man he was. Distant, controlled, emotionally unavailable in ways that suited her perfectly. Their arrangement was practical. Min-ah gained access to his logistics networks. He gained her family's shipping empire. Together they controlled supply chains across continents. Elegant, profitable, clean, which was why Min-ah noticed immediately when something changed. He had always been punctual, returned calls within the hour, attended meetings prepared, was reliable like expensive machinery. But over the past month, he had become distracted, missed dinner with her father, rescheduled 2 conference calls, seemed elsewhere even sitting across from her. Min-ah wasn't concerned. Not at first. Men had brief distractions. Affairs, usually. Min-ah had expected he might have 1 or 2 before the wedding. She certainly planned to have her own. But this felt different. So Min-ah did what she always did. Investigated. Her family employed people for this. Discreet people. Effective people. Within a week, Min-ah had a name. Amanda Okafor. And a photograph. Black woman. African. Single mother. Nurse's assistant in Gamcheon-dong. The kind of woman who had no business anywhere near Seo Joon's world. Min-ah stared at the photo. She wasn't angry. Anger was inefficient. Just aware. Aware that he found something that made him feel. And feelings, unchecked, could compromise carefully constructed plans. So Min-ah decided she'd handle this. Quietly, efficiently, permanently. The way Min-ah handled everything else. So Joon told himself he was helping. That Amanda just didn't understand how much easier her life could be if she let him in, that he wasn't asking for anything back. But the truth was Messier. Every time he solved a problem for something shifted inside. Purpose, connection, being needed in a way that had nothing to do with business. He had spent years building walls, keeping distance, managing relationships like transactions. But with Amanda it was different. She hadn't asked for anything, hadn't wanted anything, had simply helped because it was right, and he didn't know how to process that purity. So he tried to match it, tried to give her the security she'd given him. But what he didn't understand was that security and control often looked the same from outside, and Amanda was beginning to feel the difference. He also didn't understand that what he felt, this pull, this need to be near her, was becoming impossible to reconcile with the wedding 2 months away. At night, alone in his Houndy apartment, he would stare at the ceiling trying to logic through it. He could marry Min-ah as planned, fulfill obligations, build the empire everyone expected, and keep Amanda in his life as what? A friend? A charity case? A woman he thought about more than he should? The math didn't work. Neither did the alternative. Because walking away from Min-ah meant walking away from everything Seo Joon had built. Every contract, every alliance, every carefully negotiated piece of his professional life. His family would disown him. Her family would destroy him. The merger would collapse. He would lose everything, except maybe Amanda, and he didn't know if that was enough. It happened on a Thursday evening. Amanda came home to find Seo Joon sitting on her front steps, bag of groceries beside him. He mentioned he'd noticed Amanda had been working late, thought she might not have time to shop. Amanda stared, asked how he knew she'd been working late. He hesitated, said he'd just assumed, but Amanda knew better. Asked if he was watching her. He explained he was just being careful. That Gamcheon-dong wasn't always safe at night. That he wanted to make sure Amanda and Ken were okay. Something cold settled in Amanda's chest. She told him to leave. He looked hurt, said he didn't understand. That he was trying to help. Amanda's voice stayed steady. said help was supposed to make her feel safer, not smaller, that gratitude wasn't supposed to feel like a cage, that she appreciated everything but needed him to stop. So Joon didn't argue, just stood, nodded, left the groceries on the step, walked away. But Amanda could feel this wasn't over. Men like Seo Joon didn't give up easily, especially when they believed they were doing right. What Amanda didn't know was that he sat in his car for an hour after leaving, staring at nothing, trying to understand why the thought of never seeing Amanda again felt like suffocation. Try to understand why a woman he barely knew had dismantled every certainty he had built his life on, and trying to figure out what the hell he was going to do about the wedding in 8 weeks. In the days after, Amanda tried to return to normal, but normal had been irreversibly altered. She noticed things she hadn't before. How certain problems disappeared too quickly. How doors opened that had been closed. How people treated her differently, like she'd become someone worth paying attention to. And she hated it. Amanda had spent years learning to be invisible. Invisibility kept her safe, kept her focused, kept her from becoming a target. But he had seen her, and now Amanda couldn't unseen herself through his eyes. She started questioning her own decisions. When Amanda paid for something, she wondered if he had subsidized it. When something went smoothly, she wondered if he'd intervened. She felt like a puppet whose strings had been cut, only to realize the strings were still there, just harder to see. And beneath it all, something else grew, something Amanda refused to name, because naming it would mean admitting that. Somewhere in the past weeks, she had started looking for Seo Joon, listening for his car, feeling disappointed when days passed without him appearing. And that was the most dangerous thing. Amanda couldn't afford to care about a man who had no business in her life, a man from a world she'd never belonged to, a man who was probably just bored and would disappear the moment something more interesting came along. Amanda told herself this every night, but her heart wasn't listening. The woman arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Amanda had just picked up Ken from school. They were walking up when a black sedan pulled up. Woman stepped out, Korean, mid-30s, expensively dressed, clothes that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. She walked directly to Amanda. The woman introduced herself as Kang Min-ah and stated they needed to talk. Amanda's first instinct was to refuse, take Ken upstairs, close the door. But something in the woman's expression stopped her. Not anger, not threat, just certainty. Amanda told Ken to go upstairs to Mrs. Parks. Ken hesitated. Amanda insisted. When Ken was gone, Min-ah spoke. Min-ah explained she knew about Seo Joon, about the help he'd been providing, about the time he'd been spending in this neighborhood. Min-ah said she understood why Amanda might find it flattering. But I wanted Amanda to understand something. Seo Joon was engaged, wedding in 2 months, contract signed. The merger was worth 800 million won. And nothing, not guilt, not charity, not what TV thought he felt, was going to change that. Amanda listened without expression, told Min-ah she hadn't asked for his help, that she repeatedly told him to stop. Min-ah smiled, didn't reach her eyes, explained that didn't matter. What mattered was that Seo Joon's attention was divided, and divided attention was dangerous for everyone. Min-ah suggested Amanda make it clear to him that his help wasn't welcome, that his presence was unwanted, that whatever he thought existed between them didn't. Amanda asked what would happen if she refused. Min-ah's expression didn't change, noted that Amanda seemed smart, that she'd worked hard to build a life here, to get her visa, to provide for her son. Said it would be unfortunate if complications arose. Immigration complications, employment complications, the kind that make a difficult life impossible. Min-ah said all of this in the same calm tone someone might use to discuss weather, then handed Amanda a business card. Told Amanda that if she ever needed anything, legal advice, employment references, visa assistance, she should call, because I believed in helping people who made good decisions. I got back in her car and left. Amanda stood on the narrow street for a long time, holding the card, understanding, finally, what Seo Joon's attention had cost her. Seo Joon stayed away for 2 weeks, and this was the longest 2 weeks of his life. He tried to convince himself that distance was respect, that giving Amanda space was right. But he couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't stop replaying their last conversation, couldn't stop feeling like he'd done something wrong when he'd only been trying to help. And there also the wedding shifting in close. Finally, he returned, not to her apartment, not to her street, just waited at the small cafe, where Amanda sometimes stopped after work. When Amanda walked in and saw him, she almost turned around, but something made her stay. She sat across from him, didn't order anything. He spoke first, explained he'd been thinking, that he understood why she was upset, that he didn't mean to overstep. He paused, then told Amanda that the night she saved him changed something in him, that he didn't know how to go back to who he was before. Said he wasn't trying to control her, just wanted to help. Admitted he thought about Amanda more than he should and didn't know what to do with that. Amanda listened. When he finished, she told her truth. Explained she didn't need protection. She needed autonomy. Didn't need someone to fix her life. Needed someone to respect the life she'd built. Told him that care without boundaries wasn't care. It was possession. Then Amanda told him about Minos's visit. He went very still. She watched his expression shift. Confusion to understanding to something that looked like fury. Said Min, I had no right. That he'd handle it. That Amanda didn't need to worry. She shook her head. Explained this was exactly the problem. That he kept trying to handle things. Kept trying to fix things. Kept inserting himself into her life without understanding what it cost her. Said she couldn't afford to be caught in whatever complication existed between he and his fiancée. That she had a son to protect. A life to maintain. Getting involved with him, in any capacity, was a risk she couldn't take. He absorbed her words in silence. Asked what Amanda wanted from him. Amanda thought for a long time. Told him she wanted him to let her go. That if he truly cared, he'd walk away and never come back. He sat across from her, and for the first time since Amanda had known him, he looked lost. Like someone who had lost his soul. Sad and quiet for some seconds, maybe minutes. Then asked if that was really what she wanted. Amanda's voice was gentle. Explained it didn't matter what she wanted. It mattered what was safe for Ken. And staying in his orbit wasn't safe. Amanda stood before he could respond. And left. So June drove directly to Minos's penthouse in Seoul City. Min was expecting him. Poured scotch without asking. Sat across from Seo Joon with the same composed expression. Told Min what she'd done was unacceptable. Min sipped her drink. Explained she'd simply had a conversation. Made no threats. Only clarified their situation's reality. Said Min, I had no right to involve Amanda. Min set down her glass. Asked him if he had feelings for this woman. This nurse. This single mother from a world so far removed from his that the idea of them together was absurd. He didn't answer. Min took his silence as confirmation. Told him she understood. That he'd been through trauma. That Amanda helped him. That gratitude could be confused with deeper feelings. But Min also explained that feelings were temporary. That the merger was permanent. That 800 million won. And 2 family legacies weren't things one abandoned for temporary confusion. Said the wedding would happen. Contracts would be honored. And whatever he thought he felt for Amanda would fade once he stopped indulging it. Min said all of this calmly, rationally, as if emotions were commodities to manage. He stared at her, thinking, and finally understood what his life would be if he married her. Controlled, calculated, devoid of anything resembling warmth. He stood up and told Min the engagement was over. Min laughed, not cruelly, almost fondly. Explained he couldn't break the engagement. That contracts were binding. That her father would sue. That his company would be destroyed. That everything he'd built would collapse. Said he was welcome to have his feelings. But feelings didn't change reality. He looked at Min for a long moment. Then left. Because he understood something Min didn't. Some cages weren't worth the security they provided. Some prices were too high, even for empire. So June kept his word. Stopped appearing in Amanda's life. Stopped solving her problems. Stopped watching from distance. It was harder than expected. Every day, he resisted the urge to check in, to make sure Amanda was okay, to intervene when he saw something that could hurt her. He told himself this was what she wanted. This was respect. But it felt like failure. Meanwhile, he dealt with fallout from breaking his engagement. Minos's father filed 3 lawsuits. Business partners withdrew. Contracts terminated. His company lost 20% of its value in 2 weeks. His own father stopped returning calls. The Korean business community treated him like he'd committed treason. And through it all, he didn't defend himself. How could he explain that he destroyed a professional life for a woman he barely knew? For a feeling he couldn't name? For the memory of kindness given without expectation? He couldn't. So he absorbed the damage. Restructured his company. Found new partners. Started rebuilding. It would take years to recover, what he'd lost. But at least he could breathe. Meanwhile, Amanda tried to reclaim her life, handled her own repairs, navigated her own paperwork, asked for help when needed, but only from people who didn't make her feel indebted. It was exhausting, but it was hers. For the first time in months, Amanda felt like she was standing on solid ground, and yet there were moments when she missed the ease. The sense that someone was looking out, the knowledge that if something went wrong, she wasn't completely alone. Amanda hated feeling that way, but couldn't deny it. She also couldn't deny that she thought about him, whether he'd married the woman from the photo, whether he'd moved on, whether he ever thought about the night in the snow. Amanda told herself it didn't matter. But late at night, when Ken was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Amanda would remember the way he had looked at her, like she mattered, like she was worth protecting, like she was more than just a woman struggling to survive. And Amanda would feel something she hadn't felt in years, something she refused to name. The call came at 2 a.m. Ken had been running a fever all evening. Amanda gave him medicine, monitored carefully, but when she checked before bed, his skin was burning. His breathing was shallow. Ken wasn't responding to her voice. Amanda's hand shook as she called emergency services. The ambulance took 20 minutes navigating Ganchendong's narrow streets. By the time they arrived, Ken was barely conscious. They rushed him to Busan Medical Center. Amanda rode him back, holding his hand, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. Doctors said it was severe infection. Escalated quickly. They caught it just in time. Ken would be okay, but Amanda would never forget the terror of those hours. The helplessness, the isolation, the fear of losing the only thing that mattered. She sat beside Ken's hospital bed and cried. And in that moment, she understood something she hadn't wanted to admit. She was tired of doing everything alone. But more than that, Amanda had felt something real, even if it was impossible, even if it could never work, even if acknowledging it meant risking everything. So Joon found out about Ken's hospitalization through a hospital contact. He didn't ask how serious, didn't call Amanda. He simply showed up. Amanda looked up from Ken's bedside and saw him in the doorway. She didn't have energy to tell him to leave. He didn't ask if he could stay, just sat down in the chair across from Amanda, didn't speak, didn't offer solutions, didn't try to fix anything, just stayed. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Ken's fever broke. His breathing steadied. And through it all, he stayed. When Ken finally woke, groggy and confused, Amanda stroked his hair and told him everything was okay. Ken looked past Amanda and saw him, asked who he was. Amanda hesitated. He answered before she could, told Ken he was a friend. Ken seemed to accept that. Later, when Ken fell back asleep, Amanda finally spoke, asked why he came. He said he couldn't stay away. Amanda asked about his engagement, told her that it was over, that he'd broken it off. Amanda stared at him, asked why ahead. He went quiet for a long time, said he felt like he was dying slowly, thinking he was about to marry someone he has no feelings for or cared for. Said Amanda reminded him what being alive felt like. Amanda didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, but she didn't ask him to leave either. I wasn't accustomed to losing. When Seo Joon broke their engagement, and I had been angry, but anger was manageable. What came after was something else. Humiliation. The Korean business community didn't just gossip, they devoured scandal. And a broken engagement worth 800 million won was the kind of scandal that defined reputations. Min-ah's father's company lost contracts. Partners withdrew. Competitors circled. And Min-ah watched everything she'd worked for begin to crumble. All because he developed feelings for a woman who had no business in his world. So she decided, if she couldn't have him, if she couldn't salvage the merger, then Min-ah would make sure Amanda understood exactly what it meant to interfere. Min-ah made calls, pulled strings, applied pressure in places Amanda would never see coming. Within 2 weeks, Amanda received a letter from immigration, discrepancies in her visa paperwork. An audit was being conducted. Amanda's supervisor at the care facility called her into the office. There had been complaints, unspecified, but serious enough to warrant suspension pending investigation. Ken's school sent a letter. His tuition assistance had been revoked. Administrative error. Everything that had been stable began to shake, and Amanda knew exactly who was behind it. Amanda confronted him in the hospital parking lot, told him what was happening, the visa audit, the job suspension, the tuition, explained this was exactly what she'd been afraid of, that getting close to him made her a target, that his world and hers couldn't coexist without one destroying the other. He listened, said he'd fix it. Amanda shook her head, explained that was the problem, that he kept trying to fix things, that every time he intervened, it made things worse. That meant I wasn't going to stop, that people like her didn't lose gracefully, that the only way to end this was for Amanda to disappear from his life completely. He asked if that was what she truly wanted. Amanda hesitated, said it didn't matter what she wanted. It mattered what was safe for Ken, and staying in his orbit wasn't safe. He didn't argue, but he also didn't agree. Instead, he made calls of his own, reached out to Minho's father, not to beg, not to apologize, but to offer something the man couldn't refuse: a business opportunity, a partnership that would give Minho's company access to international markets they'd been trying to penetrate for years. No marriage, no merger, just business, clean, profitable, face-saving. Minho's father considered it and accepted. Within a week, the pressure on Amanda stopped. The visa audit quietly closed. Workplace complaints disappeared. Tuition assistance mysteriously reinstated. Amanda knew what he had done, and she didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. Months passed. He became a quiet fixture in Amanda's life. Not constant, not overwhelming. Just there, pick Ken up from school sometimes, fix things that broke, sat with Amanda when she was too tired to talk, never asked for more than she was willing to give. And slowly, something grew between them. Neither named it, neither spoke it out loud, but it was there, in the way he looked at Amanda when he thought she wasn't watching, in the way her chest tightened when his car pulled up, in the silence that felt more honest than any words. It terrified her, because whatever this was, this feeling, this pull, it had no future. His world and hers were too different. The gap between who he was and who she was couldn't be bridged by good intentions. Loving him meant accepting a life of always being the outsider, the charity case, the woman who didn't belong. Amanda hadn't survived 7 years of invisibility just to become visible as someone's exception. But she also couldn't deny what she felt, and that was the cruelest part. He understood this too. Understood that what he felt for Amanda was real, deeper than anything he'd experienced before. But he also understood that feelings weren't enough, that loving someone meant more than just wanting them. It meant building a world that could hold both of you, and he couldn't see how that world could exist. Not when every time they appeared together in public, people stared. Not when his business partners questioned his judgment. Not when Ken came home asking why other kids said his mother's boyfriend looked different. So they existed in limbo, together but not together, caring but not claiming, feeling everything but saying nothing. For 6 months, they tried. Seo Joon integrated into Amanda's life as much as he could, showed up to Ken's school events, learned to cook jollof rice from Amanda's Nigerian neighbor, sat through church services where he understood only fragments. Amanda tried to exist in his world, attended business dinners where she was the only black woman in the room, smiled through conversations about art she'd never seen and wine she couldn't pronounce. They tried, but trying wasn't the same as fitting. She felt the stares, heard the whispers, watched as people tried to figure out what someone like he was doing with someone like her, and he tried to pretend it didn't matter. But it did, because every time he introduced her to a business associate, he watched them recalculate, watched them reassess him, watched as doors that had been open began to close. His company continued losing contracts. Partners became scarce. The rebuilding he'd started stalled. And Amanda watched it happen. Watched him sacrifice everything he'd built. For her, it should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like drowning. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. They'd taken Ken to the Busan Museum of Art, something he arranged. A private viewing he thought Ken would enjoy. But as they walked through galleries, Amanda felt it. The way staff looked at her. The way other visitors moved around her like she was something to avoid. The way even in this space, surrounded by beauty and culture, she didn't belong. And Ken felt it too, asked why people kept staring. Amanda didn't have an answer. On the drive back to Gamcheon-dong, he tried to talk about it, tried to say it didn't matter, that people would adjust. But Amanda had stopped listening. She had finally understood something she'd been avoiding for months. This couldn't work. Not when the world punished you for it. Not when your presence cost the person you cared about everything they'd worked for. Not when your child started noticing that being with you meant being different. That night, after Ken went to bed, Amanda made a decision. She didn't tell him, just started planning. Amanda made her decision 3 weeks later. She'd been offered a position at a medical clinic in Anugu. Pay was less than half what she made in Korea. Hours would be brutal. Conditions were nothing like what she was used to, but it was home. And Amanda was tired of fighting to belong somewhere that would never fully accept her. She told Ken they were going back to Nigeria. Ken cried, said he'd miss his friends, his school, his life in Busan. He'd miss Seo Joon. Amanda held him and said nothing because she couldn't tell Ken she'd miss him too. That leaving felt like tearing out a piece of herself. That walking away from June was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but it was also the only thing that made sense. Amanda left Korea on a Tuesday morning. She didn't tell him. She couldn't, because if Amanda saw him one more time, if she heard his voice, if he asked to stay, she might not be strong enough to leave. So she simply disappeared. Packed while Ken was at school, arranged flights, said goodbye to neighbors, left keys with the landlord, and then she was gone. So June found out 2 days later. He'd come to her building the way he always did. Unannounced but expected. Knocked. No answer. Knocked again. The landlord appeared in the hallway, told him that Amanda left, returned to Nigeria. Didn't leave a forwarding address. He stood in the narrow hallway and felt something inside him crack. Amanda hadn't said goodbye, hadn't given him a chance to argue, to convince her, to find a solution. Amanda had simply left, and he understood finally what that meant. Amanda had made her choice, and it wasn't him. Amanda returned to Nigeria with Ken and didn't look back. She opened a small clinic in Enugu, modest, under-resourced, overwhelming, but it was hers. Ken adjusted slowly. Missed Korea, missed his friends, missed the life they'd left behind. Ken asked about Seo Joon once. Amanda told him that sometimes people come into your life for a season, and when that season ends, you have to let them go. Ken seemed to accept that, but late at night, Amanda would lie awake and wonder if she'd made the right choice. If leaving without saying goodbye had been cruel, if protecting herself and Ken had been worth the weight she now carried. Amanda had no answers, only the certainty that she couldn't have stayed, and the quiet, unspoken grief of everything she left behind. So June rebuilt his life piece by piece. Took months, then years, threw himself into work, rebuilt contracts he'd lost, found new partners who didn't care about his personal life, dated occasionally, women who made sense in his world, women who fit, but none of them made him feel the way Amanda had. None of them reminded him what being alive felt like. People stopped asking why he had never married. They assumed he was married to his work, that he preferred it that way, and he let them think that, because the truth that he had once felt something real and lost it because the world wouldn't make room for it wasn't something he could explain. He thought about Amanda sometimes, wondered where she was, if she was happy, if she ever thought about the night in the snow. So June would never know, but he understood something now he hadn't understood before, that some people change you, that some connections are too deep to forget, that some love is real but not enough, and that moving on didn't mean forgetting. It just meant learning to carry the weight. Years later, Amanda would think about the night she found Seo Joon in the snow. She'd think about the $20 she spent, the choice she made, the life that followed. Amanda would wonder what would have happened if she'd walked past him, if she'd chosen safety over compassion, if she protected herself instead of a stranger. She'd never know the answer. But Amanda knew this. Some kindness saves you once. Some kindness changes you forever. And some feelings, no matter how real, cannot survive the way of the worlds that try to crush them. So June thought about her too, on nights when sleep wouldn't come, when the silence in his Houndy apartment felt suffocating. He would remember the warmth of Amanda's presence, the way she'd knelt beside him in the snow, the way she'd looked at him like he mattered. He'd wonder if Amanda ever thought about him, if she ever regretted leaving, if what she felt had been as real as what he felt. He would never know, but he understood something now, that some connections are too painful to maintain, that some endings are kinder than holding on, that moving on didn't mean the feeling disappeared. It just meant learning to live with it. Amanda and Seo Joon never spoke again. They didn't exchange letters, didn't follow each other's lives from distance. They simply existed in separate worlds, carrying what couldn't be spoken, feeling what couldn't be shared, remembering what couldn't be forgotten. But on winter nights, when snow fell in cities half a world apart, they remembered the cold, the warmth, the moment everything changed, the kindness that refused to be forgotten, and the feeling that was real but never spoken. Never claimed, never resolved, just felt, and that perhaps was the cruelest ending of all. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of it, unspoken, unresolved, forever carried, forever silent. If you've ever held a hand of someone who changed your entire world, only to realize the world wasn't built to let you keep them, then you know. You know that some stories don't end with a wedding or a final goodbye. They just drift. They wait for the weight of reality to do what it does best. It pulls you apart. It pulls you back to the lives you were supposed to lead. The ones defined by bank accounts, bloodlines, and expectations of people who will never understand what happened in the silence of a snowy alleyway. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's the quiet, crushing bravery of choosing to disappear so the other person can survive. Even if it means carrying a feeling that has no name, no home, and no resolution. Because no matter how many miles lie between the neon high-rises of Seoul and the resilient spirit of Enugu, some souls are bound by a kindness that costs more than we can ever afford to pay. Amanda and Seo Joon aren't a tragedy. They are a testament, a reminder that being seen is a heavy thing to carry. But once it happens, you are never truly the same again. This has been a story of a $20 miracle, a cold reality, and the unspoken weight of us. This is Seoul and the Sahara. Until the next collision.
Underneath the moon's haunting trance, a gateway emerges mysterious and dark.